The bass reverberated through my ribcage, mimicking the rhythm of a second heart, as I navigated the dense throng of bodies. Overhead, crystal chandeliers scattered fractured beams of light across the hotel's marble expanse, turning the guests' faces into shifting, kaleidoscopic masks. I was an intruder here, a spectral figure drifting unseen among the upper crust of Manhattan. But when your roommate works as the event's photographer and pleads for an assistant, refusal isn't an option. Especially not when you are 3 months behind on rent payments. Just hold the reflector and try not to get in the way, Zoe had instructed, giving my arm a reassuring squeeze before vanishing into the swarm of guests, leaving me stranded with expensive equipment I barely understood how to operate. The champagne they had provided for the staff was cheap, a far cry from the vintage bottles flowing freely for the attendees, but it hit my empty stomach with aggressive force. I hadn't eaten a real meal since consuming half a sandwich the previous day. The ballroom seemed to tilt on its axis as I pressed my spine against a marble pillar, attempting to find my equilibrium. The black uniform, borrowed from Zoe's wardrobe, hung loosely around my waist. It was clear I had lost weight again. That was the moment I first saw him. His movement was distinct from the rest of the crowd. While the guests drifted in chaotic, aimless tides, he sliced through the room like a precision blade, direct, deliberate, and inevitable. He was flanked by 3 men, their eyes perpetually darting around the perimeter, scanning for threats. His suit lacked the ostentatious flair of the tech moguls or the Wall Street bankers, yet the fabric captured the light in a unique way, absorbing the illumination rather than reflecting it. It was Italian, custom-tailored. Even I possessed enough knowledge to identify that much. When he turned, I caught a glimpse of his profile. A sharp jawline, a straight nose, and dark hair that was faded close on the sides but left longer on top. He wasn't handsome in the classical sense, but he was undeniably magnetic. A primal instinct deep within my brain whispered a warning of danger. I averted my gaze a second too late, his eyes locked onto mine from across the vast room, and for a split second, the rest of the world blurred into insignificance. A faint half-smile touched his lips, appearing and vanishing as quickly as a camera flash. I felt stripped bare, exposed, as though he had reached across the distance to peel back my skin and inspect the soul beneath. "Move, will you?" A guest collided with me, sloshing champagne down the front of my borrowed dress. The trance was broken. I mumbled a quiet apology, dabbing uselessly at the spreading stain with a flimsy cocktail napkin. When I lifted my head again, he had vanished. "Emma, there you are." Zoe appeared at my side, her camera suspended from her neck. "I need you on the upper level for the balcony shots. The client is requesting a view of the entire ballroom from above." I trailed behind her toward the grand staircase, thankful for a specific task to occupy my mind. The second floor offered a reprieve from the noise, the music reduced to a distant vibration. We located a service door opening onto a small balcony that overlooked the festivities. "Hold this." Zoe shoved the reflector into my grip. "And whatever you do, don't drop it. It's worth more than your entire student loan debt." The joke struck a painful chord. My stomach lurched as I took my position beside her, my arms trembling faintly from a combination of fatigue and starvation. Below us, the party swirled in dizzying patterns of affluence and influence I would never comprehend. The alcohol, the anxiety, the hunger, it all crashed over me in overwhelming waves. Black spots began to dance in my peripheral vision. "I need to sit down," I whispered, but my voice was swallowed by the music rising from below. The black spots grew larger, merging until they formed a curtain of darkness. The final thing I recalled was the reflector slipping from my grasp, Zoe screaming my name, and the terrifying sensation of gravity taking hold. Then, absolute nothingness. I regained consciousness to the scent of fine leather and something spicy. Sandalwood, perhaps, or amber. My eyelids felt weighted down, but I forced them to flutter open. The first thing I registered was not a location, but a person. Him. The man from the ballroom. His face was hovering directly above mine, his features even sharper at close range. Deep-set eyes, the color of scorched copper, examined me with an intensity that was unnerving. With a jolt of panic, I realized I was being cradled against his chest, one of his arms supporting my shoulders while the other was draped protectively across my waist. "Don't move," he commanded, his voice pitching lower than I had anticipated. There was a rough, gritty edge beneath the cultured tone. "You fainted." We were in a vehicle. No, a limousine. The privacy divider was raised, sealing us in a cocoon of soft ambient lighting and plush leather seating. Beyond the tinted glass, the streets of Manhattan blurred by in streaks of neon light and shadow. "Where?" My voice cracked, dry and weak. I made another attempt. "Where are you taking me?" "Hospital." I struggled to push myself upright, adrenaline and panic lending me a temporary surge of strength. "No, no hospitals. I can't afford." I bit down on my lip, a wave of humiliation washing over me. "I'm fine. It was just a drop in blood sugar. Please, just let me out right here." His arm tightened around me, not enough to cause pain, but with an authority that was unmistakable. "You struck your head when you fell. You require medical attention." "Who are you?" I managed to ask, though I had a sinking suspicion I already knew the answer. There had been hushed rumors at the party regarding a guest no one dared to approach directly. A figure powerful enough to make politicians and billionaires sweat. He observed me for a long, silent moment, as if calculating exactly how much to reveal. "Alessandro Russo," he finally answered, offering neither a handshake nor a title or explanation. The name hit me with the shock of ice water. Everyone in New York recognized the Russo family name. On paper, they were titans of real estate and shipping logistics. In the shadows, however, they controlled a vast portion of the city's underworld. I had read enough news headlines to understand that law enforcement could not touch them. Witnesses vanished into thin air, and prosecutors abruptly dropped charges. I was trapped alone in a vehicle with a man capable of making people disappear. "Your friend, the photographer," he said, misinterpreting the fear in my eyes. "She is following us in a separate vehicle. She wanted to ride with you, but there wasn't sufficient space with my security detail." "I need to go home," I stated, fighting to keep my voice from trembling. "Thank you for assisting me, Mr. Russo, but I am truly fine." His lips curved upward slightly. "Alessandro," he corrected. Then, he asked, "What is your name?" Instinct told me that lying to this man would be a dangerous mistake. "Emma. Emma Calloway." "Emma," he repeated, sounding as if he were tasting the syllables. "You work for the event planning company?" "No, I was just assisting my roommate. I'm a student in the NYU Fine Arts program." I was rambling now, the words tumbling out without a filter. "I'm set to graduate this spring, assuming I can scrape together the tuition for the final semester." His expression shifted subtly, his interest sharpening. "You are an artist?" I nodded, no longer trusting my voice to hold steady. Why was he asking these questions? Why did he care? The limousine slowed and then came to a halt. We had arrived at a private entrance to what appeared to be an upscale medical facility, certainly not a standard emergency room. "This is my family's private medical center," he explained, noting my confusion. "They will take care of you." Before I could voice another protest, the door was pulled open. One of his security personnel stood waiting outside. With surprising gentleness, Alessandro shifted me toward the exit, yet kept one arm firmly secured around my waist. "I can walk," I insisted weakly. "Humor me," he replied, guiding me out of the car with practiced ease. Once inside, everything moved with rapid efficiency. I was ushered into an examination room that resembled a luxury hotel suite far more than a hospital ward. A doctor entered, a woman in her 50s with a kind face, though her eyes darted nervously toward Alessandro. "It is likely just severe dehydration and hypoglycemia," she informed him after a brief examination. "However, we will run a few tests to ensure there is no concussion." Alessandro nodded. "Do whatever is necessary. I will wait." "That is really not." I began to object, but he silenced me with a single glance. "I will wait," he repeated, this time directing the statement to me. After blood was drawn and a quick CT scan was performed, the doctor confirmed her initial diagnosis. "You require rest, proper nutrition, and fluids," she told me. I am prescribing a regimen of vitamins and scheduling a follow-up appointment. I can't afford. I started to say again. It is taken care of, Alessandro interrupted. He had remained nearby throughout the entire process, making phone calls in hushed Italian that I couldn't decipher. When the doctor exited the room, he approached my bedside. When was the last time you consumed a proper meal, Emma Calloway? The question caught me off guard. I looked down at my hands, avoiding his gaze. Yesterday? Maybe the day before that. An emotion flashed across his face. Anger, though it didn't seem directed at me. That ends now. A nurse appeared with discharge papers. As I signed them, I noticed that all the billing information had been redacted with black marker. Alessandro guided me back to the waiting limousine, his hand resting at the small of my back, not forcing me, but his presence was unmistakably dominant. Inside the car, he handed me a small paper bag. You need to eat something before you take the medication. Inside the bag was a gourmet sandwich and a bottle of water. My hunger overpowered my pride, and I ate quickly, acutely aware of his eyes watching me. Your roommate has been informed that you are safe and will be returned home shortly, he said once I had finished eating. She was quite distressed. Relief washed through me. At least Zoe knew where I was. Thank you, I said softly. For everything. But you really didn't have to do all of this. Yes, he said simply. I did. The car eventually pulled to a stop outside my apartment building in Brooklyn, a dilapidated walk-up that looked especially shabby in contrast to the luxury I had just experienced. Alessandro frowned as he took in the graffiti-covered entrance and the broken security door. This is where you live? I bristled despite myself. Not everyone can afford a Manhattan penthouse, Mr. Russo. He did not respond to my sharp tone. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card. It was simple cream-colored stock with only his name and a phone number embossed in black ink. He pressed the card into my palm, his fingers lingering against mine for a moment. If you need anything at all, you call this number. It reaches me directly. I stared down at the card. Why would you? I have a proposition for you, he cut in. A business proposition. Regarding your artwork. My heart skipped a beat. My artwork. I collect pieces from emerging artists. I would like to view your portfolio. His eyes held mine captive. Think about it. Call the number when you are ready. One of his security men opened my door. Before I could step out onto the curb, Alessandro leaned in closer. The scent of his cologne enveloped me, making my head spin. Rest, Emma, he said, his voice low near my ear. We will speak again soon. I managed a nod, then escaped the intensity of his presence. As I fumbled with my keys at the building's entrance, the limousine remained idling at the curb. Only when I was safely inside the lobby did it finally pull away. Upstairs, I found Zoe pacing the length of our tiny living room. Emma, oh my God. She threw her arms around me in a crushing hug. Are you okay? When you fell, I thought, and then he just appeared out of nowhere and caught you before you hit the ground. He wouldn't let anyone else touch you. My mind reeled at the information. What? He caught me. You don't remember. You started to collapse, and I screamed, and suddenly he was there, as if he had been watching you the entire time. He caught you before you hit the floor and carried you out himself. Her eyes were wide with shock. Do you know who that was? I sank onto our threadbare couch, the business card still clutched tightly in my hand. Alessandro Russo. Zoe's face went pale. The Alessandro Russo. Holy sure. Those guys with him, they blocked anyone from following you. One of them told me you were being taken care of and gave me a card to call for updates. I've been getting text messages about your condition every 10 minutes. I closed my eyes, trying to process everything that had happened. He wants to see my artwork. What? Zoe sat down beside me, grabbing my arm. Are you serious? He said he collects pieces from emerging artists. Even saying the words aloud sounded absurd. Zoe was quiet for a long moment. Be careful. Guys like that, men with that kind of power, they don't just help random people for no reason. I reflected on the kindness he'd shown, not just the act itself, but the specific way he had gazed at me. I thought about the tenderness of his hold and the commanding tone he used when declaring my hunger was over. "I know," I had whispered back. Yet, later that night, lying in bed and staring up into the dark with his business card sitting on my nightstand, my mind refused to let go of that specific instant I woke up in his arms. I remembered his face hovering just above mine, those copper-colored eyes scanning my features as if he were committing them to memory. In that haze between sleep and wakefulness, I was certain I heard him murmur something, a solitary, nonsensical word. Hours turned into days. It took 3 full days before I mustered the nerve to dial the number printed on Alessandro's card. For 3 days, Zoe bounced between thrill asking if I realized what people in his circle paid for art and worry, warning me to be cautious because men of his stature always had an angle. For 3 days, I tried to convince myself that the whispered word and the intense look in his eyes were just figments of my imagination. My finger hovered over the dial button for 10 minutes before I finally committed. The line rang twice before a deep baritone answered. "Miss Calloway," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. "The boss is waiting for you." My stomach plummeted. How did they identify me? I hadn't unblocked my caller ID. Before I could speak, there was movement on the line, and then Alessandro's voice resonated through the speaker, causing an involuntary shiver to race down my spine. "Emma," he said. The way he shaped my name made it sound like a treasured object. "I was starting to believe you wouldn't reach out." My voice stuck in my throat. I cleared it and tried again. "I've been considering your offer to view my portfolio." "Good. Are you available tomorrow afternoon?" The directness caught me off guard. I had anticipated more formalities, perhaps a scheduled appointment at a gallery. "Yes, I don't have classes on Fridays." "Excellent. My driver will pick you up at 2. It wasn't a suggestion. "Bring your best pieces, whatever you deem your finest work." "Mr. Russo." "Alessandro," he corrected me, using the same tone he had in the car. "Alessandro," I repeated, the name feeling strange on my tongue. "I don't think I can transport my larger canvases. I work mostly in oils, and the scale is significant." Silence followed, and I could practically feel him shifting gears. "Where is your workspace? Do you have a studio?" "Just my bedroom," I confessed, heat rising in my cheeks. I had a studio at school, but I couldn't cover the fees this term. Another pause, this one stretching longer. When he replied, his tone had sharpened. "Give me your address. I will come to you." Panic flared in my chest. A man like Alessandro Russo in our rundown apartment? "That isn't necessary." "It is," he interrupted. "If I am to judge your work properly, I need to see the collection, not just samples." I swallowed hard. There was no polite way to decline without forfeiting this chance entirely. Despite my fear, the artist in me, the part that had been creating in the shadows for so long, ached for someone to truly witness my work. "Okay," I finally said, reciting my address, though I suspected he already knew it. 2 o'clock tomorrow, he verified. "And Emma?" "Yes. Eat something today." The call ended. I stared at the device, torn between annoyance and fascination at his imperative tone. Who orders a stranger to eat? Then again, he had witnessed my lowest moment, fainting from starvation, exposed and ashamed. That evening was spent scrubbing our apartment and rearranging my art to form a makeshift gallery in our tiny living area. Zoe assisted, shoving furniture aside to clear space and hanging canvases on every bare wall. "You know," she said, stepping back to look at a large piece showing a woman fading into smoke, "these are genuinely incredible, Em. Like, seriously high quality. I know I've said it, but seeing them grouped like this." She let out a low whistle. "It's no surprise he wants to view them." "He hasn't viewed them yet," I reminded her, anxiety churning inside me. "He's likely just being polite because of the party incident." Zoe shot me a doubtful glance. Men like Alessandro Russo don't act out of politeness. They act because they want something. She paused. "Just promise you'll be safe tomorrow. Don't be alone with him." "We'll stay right here in the living room," I assured her, though the idea of being alone with him sent conflicting waves of dread and excitement through me. "I'll try to get off work early," she vowed. Sleep evaded me that night. Every time I drifted off, I saw his face and felt the ghost of his arms holding me. By morning, dark rings bruised the skin under my eyes, and concealer did little to mask my fatigue. At exactly 2 o'clock, a sharp rap sounded at the door. My heart pounded as I walked across the room, drying my damp palms on my jeans before opening up. Alessandro filled the doorway, looming taller than I recalled, clad in a charcoal suit worth more than a year of my rent. A stoic security guard stood behind him. "Emma," Alessandro said, his gaze raking over me in a rapid assessment that missed no detail, not my fidgeting hands, nor the exhaustion on my face. "You didn't sleep." It wasn't a question. I retreated, letting him in. "I was preparing," I replied, motioning toward the living room where my art hung. He signaled his guard to wait outside the closed door, then turned his undivided attention to the room and my work. I observed his profile as he moved deliberately from one canvas to the next, examining each with an intensity that made my skin tingle. For several minutes, silence reigned as he methodically circled the room. I hovered nearby, anxious for a reaction, any sign of his opinion. Eventually, he halted in front of my largest piece, a gloomy cityscape featuring a single lit window and a lone figure outlined against the glow. "This one," he said, pivoting to face me. "Tell me about it." I stepped closer but kept a safe buffer between us. "It's titled Witness. It deals with urban isolation. The idea that we can be encircled by millions yet remain utterly alone. We observe one another from afar but rarely make contact." He scrutinized me with the same focus he had applied to the painting. "You feel this isolation." It felt too intrusive, yet his gaze demanded the truth. "Sometimes. Don't we all?" "No," he stated simply. "Not all of us." He looked back at the canvas. "How much?" I blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry. How much for this piece?" My mind went blank. I had sold minor works at student shows, but nothing of this magnitude or personal significance. I don't know. I hadn't considered selling it." Alessandro turned fully toward me, his face unreadable. "Everything has a price, Emma. Name yours." His phrasing sent a tremor through me. 5,000, I blurted, stating a number that felt exorbitant. The corner of his mouth quirked, almost a smile. "That is severely undervalued." He reached into his jacket for a checkbook. 20,000. I gasped. That's too much. It's not worth. I decide what things are worth to me," he cut in, already writing. "And I want this one, along with those two." He nodded at a pair of smaller works, one of a woman facing away toward choppy waters, the other of hands reaching through the dark for a speck of light. I felt light-headed. "Those two. 10,000 each." He tore the check free and extended it. 40,000 total. My hand shook as I accepted the paper, staring at the bold figures. It was more money than I had ever held at one time, enough for tuition, rent, and supplies for over a year. "Why?" I managed to whisper, looking up. Alessandro studied me for a long beat. "Because they speak to me. Because your talent warrants recognition. And because I want them." An unspoken subtext hung heavily in the air. Before I could decode it, he stepped into my personal space. He didn't touch me, but he was close enough for me to catch the scent of his cologne and feel his body heat. "You aren't eating properly," he murmured, his voice dropping. "You are still too thin." I crossed my arms, defensive. "I eat plenty." "No, you don't." His eyes narrowed. "And you aren't sleeping. Are you always this negligent with yourself?" Irritation sparked. "With all due respect, Mr. Russo." Alessandro, I corrected, meeting his intimidating stare. "My dietary and sleeping habits are not your concern." A dangerous glint flashed in his eyes, there and gone in a second. "They became my concern the moment you collapsed in my arms, Emma." The memory of waking up in his embrace, confused and exposed, sent heat rushing through me. That was an unusual circumstance. It won't happen again. He moved closer, and this time his hand rose, fingers grazing my cheek in a touch so featherlight it could have been a hallucination. "See that it doesn't. I won't always be there to catch you." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the feel of his fingertips on my skin. When he pulled his hand away, I felt a sense of loss. "I will send my people to collect the paintings tomorrow," he said, his tone reverting to business efficiency. "In the interim, use some of that money to buy a real meal and get some rest." I nodded, clutching the check. "Thank you for the purchase. It is an investment," he countered. "I have an eye for potential, for valuable things others miss." His gaze swept over me again, more deliberate now. "Very few people surprise me, Emma Calloway. You did." He turned toward the exit. "I have a gallery opening next Friday evening. A private showing for a new artist I am sponsoring. I would like you to attend." "Me? Why?" "Because I think you will find it educational, and because I want you there." He pulled a cream-colored envelope from his pocket. "The details are inside. My driver will collect you at 8. Again, not a request." I took the envelope, our fingers brushing. "I don't have anything to wear to an event like that." A faint smile touched his lips. "That has been taken care of." "What do you mean?" "You'll see." He opened the door, revealing the waiting guard. "Friday, 8 o'clock. Eat something substantial before then." Then he was gone, leaving behind his scent, a check for $40,000, and endless questions. I collapsed onto the couch, staring at the check. It felt unreal, like a dream or a nightmare. What did he actually want? Men like Alessandro Russo didn't drop that kind of money on unknown artists without expecting a return. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Zoe. *sorry, stuck at work. Everything okay? Is he still there? *I typed back. *is gone. He bought 3 paintings $4.40,000. Her reply was instantaneous. What? OMG, are you serious? Before I could. Just as I hit reply, a new text came through. Wait, what did he expect in return? The same question swirled through my own mind. What did Alessandro Russo want from me? And why did the fire in his eyes and the gentleness of his touch make me almost indifferent to the answer? 2 hours later, while I was still trying to process everything, a delivery arrived. It was a massive white box bound with a black satin ribbon. The courier refused to say who sent it, but I didn't need him to. Inside, buried beneath layers of tissue paper, lay a gown of deep midnight blue, the fabric shimmering like liquid water in the light. Beside it sat a smaller box holding delicate silver jewelry and a pair of heels that looked Italian and incredibly expensive. At the very bottom lay a card with a single line in bold, slanted handwriting, "For Friday. Wear your hair down." As I ran my fingers over the dress, the silk felt cool and fluid against my skin. It was the most beautiful object I had ever seen, likely costing more than everything I owned combined. This felt dangerous. He was dangerous. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to tear up the check, and return the dress. To forget Alessandro Russo and his intensity, his surprising tenderness, and his commanding presence. Instead, I found myself lifting the gown from its box, holding it against my body as I looked in the mirror. It looked like it would fit perfectly, as if he somehow knew my exact measurements, as if he had studied me. That thought should have terrified me. Instead, a thrill shot through me, a dangerous, forbidden excitement at being seen, truly seen, by a man like him. Friday suddenly felt an eternity away. The next morning, I deposited the check, half expecting it to bounce even though I knew it wouldn't. By the afternoon, the funds were in my account, more money than I had ever possessed at one time. I paid off my tuition balance, stocked up on art supplies, and set aside cash for rent and groceries. Even then, the majority remained. It was a strange sense of security I had never known before. True to his word, movers arrived for the paintings, handling them with professional reverence, wrapping each one meticulously before hauling them away. They left me with a receipt and another business card, this one for an art gallery in Chelsea. The owner's name was circled in the same strong handwriting. "She's expecting your call." That evening, as I sat on the fire escape outside our apartment sketching the sunset, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Miss Calloway," a woman's voice inquired when I answered. "This is Sophia Russo, Alessandro's sister." My pencil froze mid-stroke. "Oh, hello. My brother asked me to call you, she continued, her tone pleasant but distant. He mentioned you might need assistance preparing for Friday's event. That's really not necessary, I started. It wasn't a suggestion. She cut in smoothly. Alessandro rarely takes an interest in new artists. When he does, the family supports his decision. I'll pick you up tomorrow at noon. We'll have lunch, then visit my personal stylist. Like her brother, Sophia Russo didn't make requests. She stated what would happen. Before I could formulate a response, she added more softly, he told me about your work. I'd like to see it for myself sometime. Of course, I managed. Good. Noon tomorrow, then. She hung up. I stared at my phone, then out at the darkening sky. What was happening to my life? A week ago, I was just another struggling art student, invisible and forgettable. Now I had caught the attention of one of New York's most powerful and dangerous families. All because I'd fainted at a party. All because Alessandro Russo had caught me as I fell. All because he'd whispered that single, inexplicable word as I lay unconscious in his arms, *hours star. Sophia Russo was nothing like her brother. Where Alessandro emanated danger and intensity, Sophia was all polish and practiced charm. She arrived in a sleek black Mercedes, not a limousine, with only a driver and no visible security. Her handshake was firm, her smile diplomatic, and her designer outfit impeccable without being flashy. You're smaller than I expected, she said, appraising me as we settled into the back seat. Alessandro said you were too thin, but I assumed he was exaggerating. I shifted uncomfortably. I've been busy with school. Sometimes I forget to eat. Sophia raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. A dangerous habit, especially around my brother. What do you mean? Alessandro has protective instincts. She studied me with eyes the same burnt copper as her brother's. He doesn't like seeing vulnerability without addressing it. The car glided through Manhattan traffic with the frictionless ease of extreme wealth. We arrived at a discreet restaurant on the Upper East Side where the maitre d' greeted Sophia by name and led us to a private dining room. So, Sophia said once we were seated and the wine had been poured. Tell me about your art. Didn't Alessandro already tell you? I'd prefer to hear it from you. I described my work, my techniques, and my inspiration. As I spoke, Sophia watched me with an analytical gaze that missed nothing. She asked specific, knowledgeable questions that revealed her own extensive art background. You're talented, she concluded as our main course arrived. But talent alone doesn't explain my brother's interest. I set down my fork. What does that mean? Sophia took a sip of wine, considering her words. Alessandro doesn't collect art for status or investment, though he is shrewd about both. He collects pieces that speak to him on a personal level. She leaned forward slightly. The fact that he purchased 3 of your works at once is unusual. I got the impression he overpaid significantly. Oh, he absolutely did. Sophia waved a dismissive hand. Money means nothing to him. Your paintings contained something he wanted to possess. A chill ran through me at her phrasing. I just paint what I see and feel. And what my brother saw in your work resonated with him. She studied me again. What happened at the gallery event? Alessandro told me you fainted, but he was unusually vague about the details. I described the night, ending with waking up in Alessandro's arms. I omitted the whispered word. It felt too private, too confusing to share, even with his sister. Sophia listened intently. When I finished, she nodded slowly. And now he's invited you to the opening on Friday as his guest. Is that significant? Alessandro doesn't bring guests to business events, Sophia said carefully. Ever. The implications hung between us. I pushed my half-eaten food around my plate, my appetite suddenly gone. I don't understand what he wants from me. Sophia's expression softened fractionally. Neither does he, I suspect. She reached for her purse. Come, we have appointments to keep. The rest of the afternoon passed in a whirlwind of luxury. Sophia's stylist worked on my hair and makeup, teaching me techniques for the event. A personal shopper brought selections that complemented the blue dress. Sophia supervised everything with crisp efficiency, occasionally stepping away for hushed phone calls in Italian. By 5 o'clock, I barely recognized myself in the salon mirror. My usually unruly hair fell in soft waves. My skin looked luminous, and I'd learned how to recreate the subtle makeup look for Friday. Alessandro was right about your bone structure, Sophia commented as we returned to the car. You clean up remarkably well. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or an observation. Thank you for today, I said. For everything. She waved my gratitude away. This isn't charity, Emma. When a Russo shows interest in something or someone, we protect that interest. She handed me a small shopping bag containing cosmetics and accessories. Friday is important to Alessandro. Important people will be there. Don't embarrass him. I'll do my best, I said stiffly. Sophia's expression thawed slightly. That came out harsher than intended. What I meant was, be yourself, but the best version. The version I've seen glimpses of today. Her tone softened further. My brother doesn't extend himself for just anyone. There must be something special about you. Before I could respond, the car stopped outside my building. Sophia's eyes narrowed at the graffiti-covered entrance. This neighborhood isn't safe. It's all I can afford, I said, though that wasn't entirely true anymore. Thank you again for today. Sophia nodded. As I reached for the door handle, she spoke again. Emma, one more thing. I turned back. Yes. Be careful with Alessandro, she said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. Not because he would hurt you, but because he doesn't know how to care for fragile things without breaking them. The warning stayed with me for the next 2 days, echoing in my mind as I tried to focus on schoolwork and not the approaching Friday evening. Sophia had given me a glimpse into Alessandro's world, a world of wealth, power, and unspoken rules I didn't understand. Friday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. I spent hours getting ready, following Sophia's instructions meticulously. When I finally stepped into the midnight blue dress, it fit as if created specifically for my body. The silk flowed like water, making me feel simultaneously exposed and armored. At precisely 8 o'clock, a knock came at the door. I opened it, expecting a driver, but found Alessandro himself standing there. For a moment, he simply looked at me, his expression shifting subtly from appreciation to something deeper, more possessive. Beautiful, he said finally, the single word carrying more weight than effusive praise. I flushed under his scrutiny. Thank you. And thank you for the dress. You shouldn't have. I wanted to, he cut in. It suits you. In the sleek black limousine, Alessandro sat closer than necessary, his thigh occasionally brushing mine when the car turned. He smelled of that same sandalwood cologne, mingled with something distinctly his. Sophia tells me you had a productive day together, he said, his eyes still moving over me in that assessing way that made my skin tingle. She was very helpful. I hesitated. She seems protective of you. A slight smile curved his lips. My sister sees herself as the family diplomat. She smooths the way. His hand moved to rest beside mine on the seat, not touching, but close enough that I could feel its heat. Did she warn you about me? The directness of the question startled me into honesty. Yes. And yet you're here. Not a question, but a statement tinged with satisfaction. I'm curious, I admitted. About the gallery, about your world, about why you're doing all this. He studied me for a long moment. Curiosity can be dangerous, Emma. So I've heard. His smile widened fractionally. Sophia approves of you despite her warnings. That's rare. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in Chelsea, the space transformed into a minimalist showroom with dramatic lighting. As we entered, conversations paused and heads turned. Alessandro's hand settled on the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd. People nodded deferentially as we passed, their eyes curious, sometimes suspicious as they took in my presence at his side. They're wondering who you are, Alessandro murmured close to my ear. Who am I? I asked, the question more loaded than I intended. His hand pressed slightly firmer against my back. Tonight you're with me. That's all they need to know. The artist being featured was a young sculptor whose work featured twisted metal forms that somehow conveyed both violence and fragility. Alessandro introduced me to her, a nervous woman, not much older than me, who kept glancing at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Your work is amazing," I told her sincerely. "Thank you," she replied. "Alessandro saved my career." I was employed as a waitress, crafting pieces inside my parents' garage, when he happened to spot one of my sculptures at a street fair. She dropped her voice to a whisper. He purchased every single item I had displayed, then arranged this exhibition, introducing me to collectors who actually hold influence. I glanced toward Alessandro, who was conversing with an elderly couple nearby. His attention appeared to be elsewhere, though I harbored a suspicion that he could hear every syllable. "Why would he do such a thing?" I asked. The sculptor gave a shrug. He mentioned that my work reminded him of the way beauty can rise from destruction. She gazed around the packed gallery, noting the red sold stickers already materializing beside the majority of the pieces. Whatever his motives might be, I remain grateful. Throughout the duration of the evening, Alessandro kept me close to his side, his hand finding its way back to the small of my back whenever we navigated through the throng. He presented me to a select group of people, gallery owners, collectors, and fellow artists, but he deflected any inquiries regarding my relationship to him with a practiced, smooth ease. "Emma is a gifted painter," he would state. "You will be seeing her work soon enough." By the time we departed, my head was spinning from the champagne and the overload of information. The limousine was idling at the curb, and Alessandro assisted me inside with a gentleness that stood in stark contrast to the commanding aura he had projected all evening. "What were your thoughts?" he inquired as the car pulled away from the venue. "It was enlightening," I replied. "Everyone seems afraid of you, even the artist you are currently supporting." Alessandro did not attempt to deny it. "Fear and respect frequently appear similar. Which of the two do you prefer?" His eyes shimmered in the dimly illuminated interior. "From the majority of people, either is acceptable." He shifted his weight closer to me. "From you? Neither." My breath hitched in my throat. "What is it that you want from me, Alessandro?" He scrutinized me for a long, silent moment, something indecipherable passing behind his gaze. Then he extended his hand, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw with the precision of a feather. "Everything," he stated simply. The single word hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Everything. My pulse began to race as his fingers continued their soft exploration, trailing from my jaw down to the hollow of my throat, where the beating of my heart betrayed my physical reaction. "You don't even know who I am," I whispered. "I know enough." His voice had dropped to a lower register, rougher around the edges. "I know your talent, your struggle, and your strength. I have witnessed how you fight to survive in a world that seeks to break you." His hand moved to cup my cheek. "And I know that from the precise moment I caught you as you fell, something shifted." I found myself unable to look away from his intense gaze. I couldn't pretend that I didn't feel the electric current arcing between us. "For you or for me? Both." Alessandro leaned in closer, his warm breath brushing against my lips. "Tell me you do not feel it as well, Emma. Tell me, and I will stop." The invitation to refuse him was there, genuine despite the power he wielded over me in so many other ways. I could end this interaction now with a single word. Instead, I found myself closing the remaining distance between us, my lips meeting his in a kiss that began tentatively but rapidly ignited into something desperate and all-consuming. His hand slid into my hair, cradling the back of my head as he deepened the kiss. I tasted expensive champagne and something darker, far more intoxicating. My fingers clutched tightly at the lapels of his jacket, anchoring myself against the sensation of falling all over again. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, his eyes had darkened to the color of molten copper. "Come home with me," he said, the phrasing hovering somewhere between a question and a command. Warning bells began to ring in my mind, Sophia's caution echoing loudly. He doesn't know how to care for fragile things without breaking them. Yet, I found myself nodding, unable to deny the magnetic pull between us. Unable to walk away from whatever this situation was becoming, Alessandro pressed a button on the console beside him, murmured something in Italian to the driver, and then drew me back into his embrace. The remainder of the ride passed in a blur of heated kisses and exploring touches, his hands respectful yet possessive, always stopping just short of crossing invisible boundaries. His home was not what I had anticipated. Rather than a sterile penthouse, the limousine deposited us at a converted industrial building in Tribeca. Security presence was ubiquitous but discreet. Men nodded respectfully as Alessandro guided me through a private entrance and into an elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. I value my privacy, he explained, noticing my surprise at the extreme measures. The elevator doors opened directly into his apartment, though the word apartment seemed inadequate for the sprawling space. High ceilings featured exposed beams, brick walls were softened by strategic lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city beyond. But what truly stole my breath was the art. Dozens of pieces were thoughtfully arranged throughout the open floor plan. Paintings, sculptures, and installations, some were by artists I recognized, while others were unfamiliar. And there, in a place of honor on the main wall, my 3 paintings were already professionally hung and perfectly lit. You displayed them, I said softly, moving closer to the wall. Alessandro approached from behind me, his hands settling lightly upon my shoulders. Of course, art should be seen and appreciated. His thumb traced small circles against the bare skin of my upper back. Like you. I turned within his embrace, studying his face. Why me, Alessandro? With your resources and your connections, you could have anyone. Why a struggling artist from Brooklyn? His expression softened by a fraction. Because you are real. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. In my world, authenticity is rare and precious. You create beauty from pain without artifice. You survived hardship without becoming hard yourself. You barely know me, I repeated, though the protest sounded weak even to my own ears. I know what matters. He led me over to a leather sofa and poured 2 glasses of amber liquor from a crystal decanter. When I caught you that night, when you were unconscious in my arms, you seemed so fragile, yet there was something in your face, a strength that moved me. He handed me a glass. Then I saw your art and I understood. You transform vulnerability into power. That is rare. I took a sip of the liquor, which was smoky and expensive, while I processed his words. And what do you transform, Alessandro? What pain shapes your world? Something dangerous flashed within his eyes. You ask dangerous questions. You invited me here, I countered. If I am going to enter your world, shouldn't I know what drives you? Alessandro set down his glass and moved closer until our knees were touching. My family built an empire from nothing. We protect what is ours. Sometimes that requires making difficult choices. Is that why people fear you? They fear what they do not understand. His hand found mine, our fingers intertwining. Power always frightens those who do not possess it. And me. Should I be frightened? His grip tightened slightly. Never of me, Emma. With me. The distinction felt significant, though I wasn't entirely certain what it meant. I finished my drink, the alcohol warming my blood and lowering defenses I hadn't realized I had constructed. You are tired, Alessandro observed, taking the empty glass from my hand. It has been an overwhelming evening for you. I started to protest, but then realized he was correct. The emotional intensity of the night had drained me more than I had noticed. He stood up, pulling me gently to my feet. Come, he said, leading me through the apartment to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment in Brooklyn. Rest. We can talk more tomorrow. I blinked in surprise, having assumed his invitation home held different implications. You're not. A small smile touched his lips. I don't rush what is important, Emma. He brushed his fingers against my cheek. And this, you, is important to me. He showed me the attached bathroom and pointed out a silk nightgown laid out on the bed. My assistant anticipated that you might stay. Everything you need should be here. He moved toward the door, then paused. If you need anything, I am just down the hall. Before he could leave, I caught his hand. Alessandro? He turned back, an eyebrow raised in question. That night when I fainted, when you caught me, did you say something to me? His expression stilled, becoming unreadable. What do you think you heard? I hesitated, then decided on honesty. It sounded like hours. That doesn't make sense. Alessandro studied me for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, his hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. Sleep, Emma. We will talk tomorrow. He pressed a kiss to my forehead and left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood frozen, more confused than ever, as he had neither confirmed nor denied it. But something in his reaction told me I hadn't imagined it. I had heard correctly. But what could it possibly mean? The nightgown fit perfectly, like everything else Alessandro had provided. I slipped between the silken sheets, my body exhausted, but my mind racing. Despite my mental turmoil, sleep claimed me quickly, deep and dreamless. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the scent of coffee. For a moment, I was disoriented, the luxurious surroundings unfamiliar. Then, the memories flooded back. The gallery, the limousine, Alessandro's kiss, and his mysterious non-answer to my question. After showering in the marble bathroom stocked with expensive toiletries, I found clothes laid out, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that fit as if they were made for me. The thought was both comforting and unsettling. How much had Alessandro planned? How long had he been watching me before that party? I followed the scent of coffee to the kitchen, where I found not Alessandro, but a middle-aged woman preparing breakfast. Good morning, Miss Emma, she said with a slight accent. Eastern European, perhaps. Mr. Russo had to step out for a business matter, but he said to make you comfortable. Breakfast will be ready in 5 minutes. Thank you. I accepted the coffee she offered and wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows while I waited. The view was spectacular, Manhattan spread out below like a living map, the morning sun glinting off the glass and steel. My phone buzzed in the pocket of the borrowed jeans. It was a text from Zoe. Where are you? Did not come home last night. Are you okay? I quickly responded, I'm fine. At Alessandro's. Nothing happened. We'll explain later. Her response was immediate. Nothing happened at Alessandro Russo's? Call me. Before I could reply, I heard the elevator doors open. Alessandro strode in, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit, speaking rapid Italian into his phone. He spotted me by the windows and his expression warmed, though he continued his conversation for another minute before ending the call. You slept well? He asked, crossing the room to where I stood. I nodded. Better than I have in months. Good. He brushed a kiss against my cheek, the gesture surprisingly domestic. I am sorry I was not here when you woke. An urgent matter required my attention. It's fine. Your housekeeper has been very kind. Mrs. Petrova takes good care of me. He guided me to the dining area where breakfast was being laid out. An impressive spread of pastries, fruit, and eggs. And now, a view. Over breakfast, Alessandro outlined his day. Meetings until early afternoon, and then he would be free. I thought perhaps I could show you my other galleries. Several have spaces opening for exhibitions in the coming months. The implication was clear. You want to show my work? Of course. He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if unknown artists regularly received such opportunities. Your talent deserves to be seen. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Alessandro, this is happening very fast. Yesterday, I was a student struggling to pay tuition. Today you are talking about gallery exhibitions and, it feels, I don't know, like I haven't earned it. His expression hardened slightly. The art world isn't a meritocracy. Emma, talent means nothing without access and opportunity. I am presenting you with both, and for what reason? Because you admire my paintings? Because you admire me? I met his gaze without flinching. Who am I to you, Alessandro? He reached across the mahogany surface, clasping my hand in his. You are a rare find I stumbled upon unexpectedly. You are something I intend to guard and cultivate. His thumb swept soothingly over my knuckles. Is that so difficult to believe coming from a man such as myself? Yes, someone like you, he echoed, a perilous tone sharpening his words. And how do I appear in your eyes? I refused to look away. Lethal, commanding, a man who seizes what he desires and eradicates hurdles, a man who mothers fear. I hesitated for a beat. Someone I feel a pull toward, despite every warning signal. Alessandro's grip on my hand tightened. At least you possess honesty. He examined me for a long, silent minute. My existence is intricate, Emma. There are facets of my trade, and my lineage, that would unsettle you. However, I can offer you this vow: what I feel for you is genuine. Unforeseen, certainly, but authentic. What is it that you feel for me? I asked, my voice reduced to a mere breath. We barely know one another. Alessandro weighed the statement, his thumb continuing its slow, rhythmic circles against my skin. I have found that time is a poor gauge of affinity. He leaned in closer. I have known associates for decades whom I comprehend far less than I understand you after only a few days. That doesn't answer my question. A faint trace of a smile graced his lips. No, it does not. He released my hand and rose to his full height. Come with me. There is something I wish for you to see. Intrigued, I trailed him through the penthouse to a doorway I had failed to register the previous evening. It demanded a separate keycard for access, opening to reveal a private sanctum. In stark contrast to the modern minimalism of the rest of his residence, this space was steeped in the old world. Leather-bound tomes lined the walls from floor to ceiling, accompanied by a massive antique desk and the rich aroma of aged parchment and wood polish. Alessandro walked toward a painting mounted behind his desk, a small, somber canvas depicting a young woman with haunted eyes standing before a structure engulfed in flames. The technique was centuries-old Renaissance, perhaps, yet the raw emotion etched into the subject's face felt startlingly contemporary. My grandmother, he said, observing my reaction. Painted in 1942, shortly after she fled the Nazis who had torched her family estate in northern Italy. I stepped closer, analyzing the brushwork, the subtle reflection of the inferno in her irises, the way her hands were clenched in a posture that was both defensive and protective. It is magnificent. She was 19, Alessandro continued. Alone, her entire family slaughtered, possessing nothing but her wits to ensure her survival. His voice took on a softer quality. She encountered my grandfather a month later. He was a young soldier with ties to the resistance movement. They were wed within 6 weeks. That is incredibly fast, I noted. When you discover something worthy of preservation in a world bent on destroying everything beautiful, you do not hesitate. He turned to face me fully. My grandmother claimed she knew within moments of meeting him that he would either be her salvation or her ruin. Sometimes, Emma, the heart identifies the truth while the mind is still formulating doubts. The parallel he was drawing was undeniable. I swallowed hard. And did he save her? They rescued one another. Alessandro's gaze was piercing. They constructed a new life in America. They built a family, an empire. Everything I possess originated in that singular moment. That instant of recognition between them. Is that what is happening here? I asked, gesturing to the space between us. Recognition? I believe it is. He closed the distance, his hand rising to trace the contour of my jawline. When I caught you that night, when I held you in my arms, something fundamental shifted. I cannot explain it through logic. That is not particularly comforting coming from a man in your station. Aren't you required to be rational, calculating? In business, certainly. In matters of the heart, he shrugged slightly, even I must yield to forces I cannot command. The vulnerability inherent in that confession impacted me more than any grand declaration could have. Alessandro Russo, admitting there were elements beyond his control. It humanized him in a way nothing else had managed to do. You still haven't revealed what you whispered to me that night, I said. His expression instantly became guarded. Perhaps because I am not certain you are prepared to hear it. I am stronger than I appear. I am well aware. His fingers glided from my jaw to the pulse point at my throat. Your pulse is erratic. I make you nervous. Good, he murmured, leaning in. Nervousness is fitting when you stand on the precipice of something life-altering. This time, I was the one who initiated the contact, rising on my toes to press my mouth to his. Alessandro responded instantly, his arms encircling me, pulling me flush against his frame with controlled urgency. Unlike the tentative exploration of our initial kiss, this was deeper, more exacting, a mutual claiming. When we finally broke apart, his irises had darkened to the color of liquid bronze, making my stomach clench. "Remain with me today," he said, his voice raspy. "The meetings can be postponed." I hesitated, torn between desire and pragmatism. "I have lectures to attend." "Skip them." His hands traced the line of my spine, settling possessively at the small of my back. "Just for today." The recklessness of the suggestion appealed to a dormant part of my psyche. The urge to cast caution aside, to dive headfirst into whatever this connection was, consequences be damned. "Just for today," I agreed. His smile was transformative, thawing his usually austere features. "I will make the necessary calls." We passed the day in a bubble of intimacy that felt almost dreamlike. Alessandro guided me through his private art collection, narrating the history behind each masterpiece. We conversed for hours about everything and nothing: my childhood in a small Pennsylvania town, my aspirations for my art, literature we had read, destinations we longed to visit. He ordered lunch from an exclusive restaurant, and we dined on the balcony overlooking the sprawling city. Later, he introduced me to his extensive library, pulling down volumes of art history I had only ever seen behind protective glass in university archives. "These are for reference," he said, placing a rare book of Renaissance sketches into my hands. "Consider these resources at your disposal whenever you wish." The casual nature of the offer, as if it were natural that I would be spending enough time here to utilize his library, was not lost on me. Alessandro spoke of us as if we were already an established entity, as if my integration into his world was a foregone conclusion. Part of me wanted to resist this assumption, to assert my autonomy, but another part, the part that had always felt invisible and undervalued, basked in his focused attention, in being treated as if I truly mattered. As evening approached, Alessandro received a phone call that caused his expression to darken. He spoke in rapid-fire Italian, his tone hardening with every exchange. When he disconnected, the warmth I had witnessed throughout the day had evaporated, replaced by cold calculation. "I must go out," he said, already reaching for his jacket. "A situation requires my direct intervention." "Is everything all right?" He paused, carefully selecting his words. "Business complications. Nothing for you to concern yourself with." He crossed the room to me, placing a gentle kiss on my forehead. "My driver will take you home if you wish, or you are welcome to remain here. I may be late." I thought of my tiny apartment in Brooklyn, of Zoe's inevitable interrogation, of the cramped bed and the noise of the neighbors. Then I looked around this sanctuary with its library, its art, and its silence. "I will stay," I decided. "If that is truly all right." Relief flickered across his features. "More than all right." He hesitated, then added, "Emma, there are aspects of my enterprises that it is better you do not know in detail. It is for your own safety." The reminder of who he truly was, and what he actually did, sent a chill through me. I had spent the day with Alessandro, the art collector, the intellectual conversationalist, the attentive companion. But now, Alessandro the crime boss was reasserting himself. "I understand," I said quietly. His eyes searched mine, looking for judgment or fear. Finding neither, he gave a single nod. "I will have Mrs. Petrova prepare dinner for you. Do not wait up." After he departed, the apartment felt emptier than its spacious dimensions warranted. I wandered through the rooms, examining the artwork, trailing my fingers over books and furniture that cost more than I would earn in a decade. Eventually, I settled in the library with a rare volume of Botticelli sketches and lost myself in the master's work. Mrs. Petrova brought a tray with dinner, a simple but delicious pasta dish and a glass of wine. After eating, I curled up on the leather sofa with another book. Despite my intention to await Alessandro's return, exhaustion claimed me, and I drifted off, surrounded by the scent of old parchment and leather. I woke to the sensation of being lifted. Disoriented, I blinked my eyes open to find Alessandro carrying me toward the bedroom. "You are back," I murmured, my voice thick with sleep. "I told you not to wait up," he chided gently, pushing the guest room door open with his shoulder. "I didn't mean to." As my senses returned, I noticed he had changed his attire. His fresh shirt was impeccable, yet a faint metallic scent clung to him. Copper and salt. I chose not to analyze what that might signify. He laid me on the bed with surprising tenderness. Sleep, Emma. We will talk tomorrow. Stay, I found myself saying, catching his hand as he began to straighten up. Please. Alessandro went still, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Are you certain? I nodded, shifting over to create space. After a moment's hesitation, he removed his shoes and jacket and stretched out beside me on the mattress. I turned into him, resting my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. His arm came around me, protective and possessive all at once. This was not my intention when I brought you here, he said quietly into the darkness. I know. And somehow, I did know. Despite his reputation, and despite the obvious magnetic pull between us, Alessandro had been careful not to pressure me, not to exploit the power imbalance that existed between us. We lay in comfortable silence for several minutes before I gathered the courage to ask the question that had been haunting me. Alessandro, when I fainted at the gala and you caught me, what was the word you whispered? His body tensed almost imperceptibly beneath mine for so long that I thought he would refuse to answer. He remained silent. Then, his voice emerged, so low I barely caught it. Hours. I lifted my head to look at his face. Hours. What does that mean? In the dim light filtering through the windows, his expression was solemn and intense. In my family, there is a legend handed down through the generations, a belief. His hand stroked slowly up and down my spine. The belief holds that when you encounter the one person intended for you, something inside recognizes them instantly. My grandfather described it to my father, who described it to me. Like pieces of the same soul finding each other again? Soulmates? I asked, skepticism coloring my tone despite the intimacy of the moment. Nothing so poetic, he corrected. It is more primal. A recognition at a level beyond conscious thought. When I caught you, when I held you unconscious in my arms, something within me responded with a certainty I cannot explain logically. His eyes locked onto mine. Ours. Meant to be part of us. Part of me. The confession should have frightened me with its intensity, its presumption. Instead, it resonated somewhere deep inside, as if answering a question I hadn't known to ask. That is why you have done all this, I said, gesturing vaguely to encompass everything, the money, the wardrobe, the galleries. Because of some family superstition. No, he said firmly. I have done all this because you have earned it. Because your talent is extraordinary. The recognition merely opened my eyes to you when I might otherwise have passed by. His hand came up to cup my face. I would never coerce you into anything, Emma. I might be many things, and some of them are dark, but I am never that. I believed him. Regardless of every logical objection, and despite knowing so little regarding him other than his reputation, I trusted his sincerity. I ought to be running the other way, I whispered. Why aren't you? I pondered the question seriously. Because whenever I am with you, I feel seen, as if someone finally notices me. Not merely my art or what I can provide, but simply me. Alessandro's thumb grazed my lower lip. I see you, Emma Calloway. The entirety of you. He leaned in closer, his breath warm upon my lips. And everything that I am responds to everything that you are. This time, when we kissed, it felt different, deeper, possessing an underlying urgency that had not been present before. His hands became tangled in my hair while mine explored the solid expanse of his chest. We moved together as though we had done this countless times, as though our bodies already understood each other's language. Clothing was discarded slowly. Every new revelation of skin was met with reverent touches and unhurried exploration. When we finally joined together, it was with a sense of inevitability, as if we were always destined to find one another this way, to connect in this most intimate fashion. Afterward, lying tangled within silk sheets and each other's limbs, Alessandro held me close, his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my ear. What happens now? I asked, tracing designs on his chest. Whatever you desire, he replied, surprising me. I will not pressure you, Emma. This, us, it must be your choice. I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. The great Alessandro Russo leaving a decision to another person. I am shocked. A smile pulled at his lips. Only for you. His expression turned serious. My life is complicated. There are facets of my family, and my business, that will never be entirely legitimate. I will not insult you by pretending otherwise. I know what your family does, Alessandro. You know rumors, headlines, he corrected. The reality is both less and more dramatic than what you have heard. He tucked a lock of hair behind my ear. I can promise you safety, protection, and everything material you could desire, but I cannot promise a simple life. I thought about my existence before knowing him. The struggle to pay rent, to purchase art supplies, to be noticed in a world that valued connections over talent. Then I thought about these last few days. Not merely the luxury and opportunity, but the feeling of being valued, of being seen. I do not need simple, I said finally. I just need real. Alessandro's eyes darkened. What we have is real, Emma. Perhaps the only real thing in my world right now. He pulled me back into his arms, and we slept entwined, my head resting on his chest, his arms protective around me. The ensuing months transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined. Alessandro kept his promises. My work was featured in prestigious galleries. Collectors began acquiring my paintings. And critics praised my raw emotional honesty. I finished my degree with honors, no longer worrying about tuition or supplies. More importantly, I found in Alessandro a partner who challenged me, protected me, and loved me with an intensity that still sometimes took my breath away. He never hid the darker facets of his world from me. But he kept them separate enough that I could pretend they did not exist most days. Zoe worried constantly, though she warmed to Alessandro after he helped her secure a prestigious photography position. Sophia unexpectedly became both mentor and friend, guiding me through the complexities of Alessandro's world with surprising patience. 6 months after that fateful party, Alessandro took me back to the hotel ballroom where we first met. The space was empty, save for thousands of candles and an elaborate dinner for two beneath the crystal chandeliers. This is where everything changed, he said, leading me to the exact spot where I had fainted into his arms. Where I found you. He knelt. On one knee, producing a ring box containing an antique diamond that had belonged to his grandmother, the woman in the painting. Emma Calloway, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I knew you were mine the moment I caught you. Will you be my wife? Looking down at this powerful, dangerous, complex man who had seen me when I was invisible to everyone else, I knew there was only one possible answer. Yes, I whispered, offering my hand. Ours. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, as he rose to kiss me beneath the same chandeliers where I had once fainted from hunger and exhaustion, I understood that sometimes falling, literally and figuratively, leads not to disaster, but to being caught by the right arms at exactly the right moment. I had fallen into Alessandro Russo's world by accident, but I would stay by choice.